भुखमारी से, हाँ भेदभाव से, हाँ पक्षवाद से हम लेके रहेंगे, तुम कुछ भी कर लो. A judge called India's youth cockroaches, and 22 million people said, yeah, that sounds about right. Not ironically and definitely not as a joke. They genuinely looked at that insult and went, same. And I've been thinking about that for 2 weeks, because that's a really weird thing to happen. Most insults land and disappear. This one landed and organized a political party. Here's the question that I want to sit with today. Why did 22 million people look at a cockroach and say, that's me? First, let's talk about what actually happened. On May 15th, India's Chief Justice Surya Kant is in court. There's a hearing about fraudulent professional credentials. And he says, and I'm reading this directly, there are youngsters like cockroaches who don't get any employment or have any place in the profession. Some of them become media, some of them become social media, RTA activists and other activists, and they start attacking everyone. He later clarified he meant people with fake degrees, not India's youth broadly. But here's the thing about context. Context travels far slower than the quote. By the next morning, Abhijit Dipke, a 30-year-old studying in Boston, formerly worked as a communication specialist for AAP, had set up a website and social media accounts for the Cockroach Jantar Party. And the eligibility criteria to join were unemployed, lazy, chronically online, and able to rant professionally. I know it's a joke, but that's also the moment the insult flipped. He didn't deny it. He didn't argue with it. He just picked it off the floor and made it a flag. And that's why the 22 million people start making sense to me. Here's the thing I keep coming back to. The CJP didn't create anger, it merely discovered it. That's truly a different thing. Most campaigns try to manufacture feelings. They try to make you care about something you didn't really care about before. The CJP didn't do that. It just named something that was already there. It gave a container to all that emotion that had been sitting without one for so long. And that emotion was real and how? NEET, India's national medical exam, was compromised by organized cheating, a paper leak that directly damaged the futures of hundreds of thousands of students who'd spent years preparing for it. CUTE, CBSE, multiple national examinations had the same irregularities. Graduate unemployment is at near record levels. The young people who joined the CJP weren't joining because a cockroach joke was funny. They were joining because someone had finally publicly and visibly with a name and symbol said, your frustration is real and here is a place that it can go. That's the mechanic. That's the reason 22 million people looked at a cockroach and said, that is me. Not because of the cockroach, but because the cockroach arrived at precisely the moment very large number of young people were already feeling like one. Dismissed, unemployed, chronically online, and being constantly told that they were the problem. You can't manufacture that. You can only be in the right place when it's time to move. Okay, I want to talk about the branding for a second here because I've been slightly obsessed with it. And on the surface, this is a joke account, right? But every single design choice is annoyingly good. Let's start with the name Bharatiya Janata Party BJP, Cockroach Janata Party CJP. Same initials, same grammatical structure. Every single mention of the CJP is an implicit comparison, and you can't say the name without invoking the thing it's satirizing. That is not an accident. Then the proposed election symbol, a smartphone. Think about what that does. You've got the lotus and you've got the hand. You've got decades of traditional political iconography. And the CJP said our symbol is the object in every young Indian's hand. The thing through which they receive news, form opinions, organize and exist politically. Before you read a single word of the manifesto, the symbol has already told you who this is for. Then the membership criteria, unemployed, lazy, chronically online, ranting. And yes, it's funny, but take each one of those words. Every single one is an insult that has been used to dismiss young Indians who are frustrated about something real. Lazy, unemployed, online, and rant-worthy. Dipke took those and turned them into requirements for entry. That's not just good joke writing. That's precise understanding of your audience's emotional experience, what they've been called, how it's landed, and how they have learned to reclaim it. I know this started as a joke, but at some point this became the sharpest political branding we've all seen in a very long time. So the CJP starts growing fast. Within 78 hours, they have 3 million followers. By day 5, they've beaten the BJP's official Instagram handle. and then the state responded. Here's the thing, nothing validates a movement faster than somebody trying to shut it down. Their X account was withheld in India because of a legal demand. IB reportedly raised concerns of national security. Their Instagram was reportedly hacked twice. Their website was taken down. The founder said government involvement. The founder's family was moved to an undisclosed location in Maharashtra and the police were posted outside their empty house. Let me say that again. The police were posted outside the empty house of the family of a man who made a satirical Instagram account about cockroaches. Every one of those actions told 22 million followers one thing, that this is real enough to be scared of. You cannot suppress a movement by visibly trying to suppress it. Every attempt to shut it down became marketing for it. The Suppression didn't write a second chapter for the CJP. It wrote a better first chapter than they could have written themselves. Okay, so here's the number I actually can't stop thinking about. Not 22 million, not Sonam Wangchuk, not the press conference with the McKinsey alumnus as spokesperson, but 2,000. That's how many people showed up at Jantar Mantar on June 6th. Dipke flew back from Boston. Wangchuk was there, cockroach masks, slogans. The police had barricaded the area in advance and around 2,000 people were physically present. 22 million online and 2,000 in person. And I've been sitting with that ratio for a little while now because I think it's one of the most honest and interesting things the CJP produced. Here's what I mean by that. Online engagement is cheap. Not in a dismissive way, I mean literally and structurally cheap. Following costs nothing, signing a form costs nothing. Changing your display picture to a cockroach costs nothing, and all of those things are expressions of real feeling, but they're low friction expressions. The barrier is almost zero. Showing up at Jantar Mantar on a Saturday is a different ask. It requires time and it requires travel if you're not in Delhi. It requires being visible, physically present in a political space, which carries a different kind of social and personal risk than an Instagram follow. And what the CJP found, what every viral moment eventually finds, is that the number of people willing to cross from low friction to high friction participation is a small fraction of the number of people willing to participate at all. That's not a failure, it's a law. The Nirbhaya protests in 2012 went from zero to massive physical turnout because the triggering event was so visceral and localized that it bypassed the friction. The Arab Spring worked differently in different countries depending on how the friction between online and offline participation was distributed. Every movement that has tried to go digital to physical has hit the same wall. And here's what I find genuinely fascinating about the CJP specifically. The 22 million felt real to everyone, including, I suspect, the people who were trying to suppress it. The state's response, the account withholding, the hacks, the police outside an empty house, was calibrated to a threat of 22 million people, not 2,000. So the question that's sitting in my head is, did the suppression happen because the movement was 22 million strong? Or did the suppression happen because nobody in power could tell the difference between 22 million online followers and 22 million people willing to move? And if it's the second thing, what does that say about how power reads digital scale? I don't have a clean answer to that, but I just think it's the right question to be asking right now. So what do I actually take away from all of this? The CJP built something real in 3 weeks. The reclamation of an insult that turned it from a wound into a flag, the discovery of a vessel for emotion that was already there, the branding that was better than it had any right to be, the suppression that became its own best advertising, and a protest that drew 2,000 people. Whether the CJP becomes a real political force, a historical footnote, or something that gets absorbed into existing opposition culture, I genuinely don't know, and I don't think anybody else does at this point yet. But I do think the 2000 is an important number in this story, because it shows you the difference between a feeling and a movement, between following and showing up, between saying that's me and actually being there to say it in person. 22 people looked at the cockroach and said same, but only 2,000 of them showed up in person. The distance between those two numbers is the work that the CJP has in front of it. The full breakdown with sources is on my Medium and Substack, and the links are in the description below. If you found this useful or have a completely different read on the 2000 number, drop it in the comments. I'm genuinely curious about what people think about this one. See you next time.